Hi, I'm David Rhodes, your host, and welcome to another episode of In the Books, where we bring the most impactful fire service literature to life. Today's guest is Lee Shapiro, a respected leader with a 40-year career in the fire service. Lee began as a volunteer at Blue Hills Fire Department in Connecticut, rose through the ranks to deputy chief, senior tour commander at Hartford Fire Department for 28 years, and now shares his knowledge as a consultant adjunct professor at New Haven and Gateway Community College, a member of the NFPA 1710 committee, and he has a new book, An Insider's Guide to Mentoring the Fire Officer, published back in January of 2025. It's a game changer, a mentoring style handbook packed with real world case studies, critical thinking strategies, fireground accountability tactics, and after action and line of duty death insights. Lee's aim to help officers of all ranks clear the noise and get to the root issues and excel. It's not just theory, it's mentorship in action. Today, we'll tap into his experience, his writing, and his priceless lessons for both aspiring and seasoned officers. Lee, welcome to In the Books.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
How's the weather up there?
Today it's rainy and muggy. Yesterday was 100 degrees and muggy.
Quite the temperature fluctuation up in the Northeast this year.
Yeah.
I went up there. I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and I was dreading the triple digits coming from Georgia. And I got up there, got off the plane. It was 71. It was like, beautiful, beautiful. That's my first trip to New Hampshire, so I was close. Wasn't too far from you.
Yeah. What would Mark Twain said? If you don't like the New England weather, wait a day. It'll change.
Wait a day. That's it.
Wasn't wrong.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Beautiful new book.
Thank you.
Got it right here on the desk.
For a cool 49 beans, it could be yours too.
So let's get right to it. What inspired you to write the book as a mentoring guide rather than just a traditional leadership manual?
Well, I teach a class at FDIC called Critical Thinking for Fire Officer Development. And basically, this book is that class in book format. So the material can be taken away from FDIC. If you can't make FDIC or whatever, you can't make the class. The material is in the book. And it's the whole class plus more material in the book. And the reason why it's basically in a mentorship format as opposed to a textbook or training manual is because most learning as firefighters they go to class, they sit in class, they ask and see classes, or they take tests, exams, they study. But the real learning is in the street. The real learning is in the kitchen table, talking to guys, doing the job from experience and everything else that comes with the job. And that's where the real rub is. And that's what I wanted to get to the heart of. I didn't want to just throw out processes and algorithms and material and just leave it at that. I wanted guys and gals, officers, to take the material and read it and understand why I'm telling you this stuff and what is the relevance behind the material and how does it fit into the context and perspective of what we do. And that's the book. That's me.
So the methodology there was you use a lot of actual real life examples without naming names, but you talk about the things that happened. And I think that gives the student or the reader perspective of the lesson. It's not just a book full of stories. It's a lesson and then that anecdotal story that goes with it that the characters are probably based off of real life incidents that happened, but you tell it in a way that is like it's given you the problem, the experience that happened, and how it was dealt with. Exactly. Is that a good summation?
Yeah. So for me, coming up through the ranks over the years, sitting at the kitchen table, listening to guys in other environments, guys and gals, they would tell war stories, and war stories are great. It gives you an opportunity to hear somebody's experience or what happened, what didn't happen, what went wrong, what went right. But the real thing for me when I walk away from those stories is, what did I learn from it? What did we all learn from this that I can take back with me and say, all right, that didn't go well, so next time I'm going to do it this way. Or, hey, I went into a situation where I thought it was this, but it was actually that. So what did I learn? What did we learn? And then I can take it back to either for myself or my crew or my shift and say, we're going to do it this way because this way is more effective, more efficient, and it works.
So it's not just providing knowledge, it's also trying to tap in and give you extra stuff to help you with the understanding of the why you do
Exactly.
what you do.
The big part of, for me, for the understanding is the why. Why is it the way it is? Why is it we do this? Why not that? What works and what doesn't? I'll give you an example. My department, a couple of years before I left, they reissued a new policy, a Mayday policy. It had all kinds of bells and whistles attached to it. You're supposed to do this and do that and do this and do that. Well, one day we tried it out just for hoo-has. Let's actually throw this policy into action and see what happens. And it was so cumbersome, so many moving parts, and so interdependent on everybody doing the right thing at the right time, and so interdependent on other people who are not directly there doing the right thing, like dispatchers and stuff like that. It didn't work. And we had to whittle it down to what really works and what's the most effective, and why are we actually ringing the Mayday bell? To get somebody out of a jackpot, not to satisfy a checklist. That's for afterwards. We're a living insurance policy standing there waiting for something bad to happen so we can go in and take action. That's the whole RIT team / Mayday policy. And we had to refocus our efforts on getting that right. And we did.
Yeah, there's a lot of policies that were developed in the conference room that they look great on paper, but when you put them into action, they just they fall apart quickly.
Oh, we had all kinds of stuff. Change radio channels and blow the horn, and the dispatchers can't even get us out the door to begin with. We're going to wait for them to do whatever they need to do. Come on, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
The accountability officer will switch to the accountability RIT vest.
And meanwhile, who's going in to get these guys?
Meanwhile, the guys are in there not breathing.
So, I mean, come on, we got to really think this through.
Yeah. So, who is this book for?
Well, like I said, the book is the class. And in the beginning, I was just thrilled to have anybody in the class. But the book, the material is for somebody who is aspiring to be an officer, somebody who is in a position of always being put in charge or acting officer, somebody who is a lieutenant who wants to move up the ranks to captain or to deputy chief or whatever, however your department is structured. It's for the new or aspiring officer, and it's for the existing officer who wants to either move up or just get a clearer perspective and see things in context as a maybe even a seasoned officer would. Somebody who might not have a lot of experience, somebody who has very little experience or has only done something once or twice in the last couple of years. That's where this material is coming from, and that's where what it's based on. It's based on somebody would say, come to a senior man or come to someone like a mentor and say, hey, here's my situation. This is what I think I should be doing. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? What am I missing? That kind of thing. And that goes through all ranks. And that's who I'm looking at. That's who I'm talking to.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, I know mentoring's been a part of your training and teaching for years. I'm sure you've read other books about mentoring and taking other classes. What inspired you to do this and make it different? What did you do different from what you had seen before?
Well, it's always nice to get mentoring in terms of what to do and how to do it, and listen to this guy. He comes from this department, or he's got X amount of years, or he's been to this job or that incident, blah, blah, blah. But mentoring is also watching the bad guys do bad stuff and learning how not to do that, or watching guys not know how to deal with situations and learning from that, or your own mistakes. Believe me, if I had $1 for every mistake, I could retire a billionaire. Just learning from mistakes and learning from from doing things the right way and the wrong way. And not only watching the superheroes and the superstars, but watching the stinkers and see how they operate and learning from them as well. And that's,
and not just seeing it and knowing it happened, but knowing how not to do that, because you can get sucked into the system that creates that atmosphere.
Also, with the stinkers is, even though they're not the superstars in the job, or they're not into the job, or they're not, the guys that you would want to have in your crew or superstars, one of these days, if you pay attention, which you should be paying attention, they will show you something. They will illuminate something to you, and you will learn something from them. I can name a couple of guys I worked with who were, just there because they were there. And all of a sudden, something would come out of their mouth, or they would do something. I was like, wow, I'm impressed. Not only am I impressed, but I learned something. So, I mean, you really have to pay attention to what you're doing, why you're there, and who you're with, because you can learn from the bad as well as the good.
Yeah. And actually sometimes learn more.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the biggest mindset shift when moving from firefighter to fire officer, or even from one officer rank to another, like lieutenant to captain or captain to battalion chief? What's that transition like? What do you have to watch out for and know?
For me, the secret to that is context and perspective. You have to understand exactly what your role and responsibilities are in your new capacity, or the capacity you're trying to achieve, and understand how that fits into context and perspective. What exactly are you supposed to be doing, and how are you supposed to be doing it? A lot of guys get promoted and they concentrate on the perks, or the authority, or the sense of, I know everything because I have a badge to prove it, or like we used to say, the two feathers on your collar. Mm-hmm. But they get in a street, they get in a road, they get in a situation or incident, and they fall flat because they're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I've often been told sometimes great firefighters don't make great officers, and great officers aren't necessarily great firefighters. Mm-hmm. And, you have to really have something to draw from experience-wise to be able to put everything that you're seeing into context and perspective.
Yep. And that's it doesn't seem like it's a heavy lift, but it's a department responsibility to make those differentiations clear. Like, what is the role of a lieutenant? What is the role of a captain? And if they don't, then you have a responsibility to go out and figure it out.
Well, I think
it's not just lieutenant, captain's not just lieutenant squared.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it, at least for me, and I don't want to speak bad about my department because, I started in '88, so a lot has changed. But if you solely depend on your department to do what you think needs to be done, especially when you're trying to advance your career, you're gonna have a lot of deficiencies. You have to be your own advocate, and you have to seek out this learning where it is. They're only basically there to keep their mandates, above board and to make sure everything is running, and they have their own issues. Mm-hmm. They're not there to make sure you're the greatest firefighter on the job. That's your responsibility. And learning is where you find it. If you have to go outside and take classes, go to conventions, talk to other people, get involved with the fools, then do it. Don't wait for your department to do it for you. You're going to be disappointed.
100%. What does critical thinking and reading people and environments look like in everyday operations?
Again, critical thinking. It's putting things to the context and perspective so you understand exactly what you're dealing with as opposed to what you're fed. So you pull up to a building, you see smoke. What's burning? Are you automatically freaking out, screaming on the radio, they're laying a mile of hose, this and that, or you get off the piece and take a walk? What's cooking? Is it just a car fire, or is it a dumpster fire? Is it a pile of trash, or is it actually a building fire? You have to understand that and think through. It's no different than the fire marshal using the scientific method to do a fire investigation, the 7 steps. What's the problem? What are my options? Choose an option and do your job.
Mm-hmm. Keep calm. And then you get to that point by a lot of practice and a lot of repetition, because you don't get if you just rely on the calls, you're not going to get enough repetition to get you proficient.
Yeah. I remember being criticized as a probie, as a new guy under 5 years, going to a working fire and afterwards going up to the chief and saying, "Hey, chief, I understand you gave the order to do whatever, this or that." I said, "Do you mind if I ask you why you made that decision?" And a couple of guys jumped on me and said, "Well, how dare you ask him? Who do you think you are?" Blah, blah. And the chief certain chiefs who are really cool about this, they're like, no, I got this. And he would pull me aside and explain the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Explain the whole thing. This is what I had. This is what I saw. This is what I needed to get done. And that was the decision process.
And that's the most important part. Even in like a post-incident review, the decision is secondary to why you made the decision. And sometimes I found when somebody would explain, okay, why did you take the line to that side of the house and enter through a window instead of going in the front door or whatever? Because it looks weird when I got there as a battalion chief. And then they would say, "Well, chief, when we got here, we had this. And there was a tractor trailer parked in front of the house blocking the front entrance, and we got them to move it after we had been here, 5 minutes or whatever." So you need to know that why.
Yeah.
Because it may make perfect sense. It may not have been a wrong move at the time. It may look weird, but it could be absolutely the perfect thing to do with the information you had at the time.
And the tools available, because you might not have everything you need.
So I guess I'm trying to think back, it hasn't been super long, but maybe 10 years, the term succession planning has been sort of the headquarters buzzword. What are you doing? Who's going to take your place? All that. Walk us through some of the stuff from the book that deals with that, and what type of questions mentors should be asking when they're doing this.
Succession planning is one of those terms that was hijacked from somewhere else and installed in the fire service, like flow path and a few other terms that all of a sudden appeared in our business. That's my opinion. But succession planning, it was basically, how do you get promoted? What's the process? And I see this all the time. I get phone calls from guys all the time. I'm looking to get promoted. Can you help me? Or I didn't do that well on the promotion. What did I miss? And I actually sit down with people and go over their exams, and not necessarily the written, because that's generally a memory test, but the oral board or the assessment center. And I've been on oral boards and assessment centers, dozens of them, so I have some experience with that, and I know what they're looking for. And I just put the individuals in the proper mindset. I don't give them the material they need to go in there and score. I just put their head in the right place so they can do well. But the whole process is, what's the job that you're trying to get? And are you preparing? What are you doing to prepare? Do you have the training? Do you have the education? Do you have the experience? And when you get to the testing process, are you ready? Can you go in there and score high enough on the written? You have to develop some study skills. Like we used to develop study skills in high school or college. Same thing. You have to develop study skills. I have all kinds of little methods and cheat codes and stuff, spiral bound note cards and colored markers and this and that. I have all kinds of stuff. Whatever works for you, whatever gets your mind going. But the same thing with the oral board. You go in there and you have to understand what they're looking for, what they want from you, what they want to hear, what they need to hear. And there's a process to that. And I just kind of go over that basically in the book. But I do go over that in private sessions as well. But what's the process? Because for me, I've taken so many promotional exams. Some I just took for practice. Some I took because I really wanted the job. Some I took because got nothing better to do. And I just, whatever I learned, I just try to give back to the guys and gals who are trying to test and help them to get through the process. It's very stressful.
Mm-hmm. We had 10 books on our lieutenant and captain's exam. And we had a guy come in and do a class on how to prepare. And it was really the first time I think I'd ever had a formal class on how to study. And I think most people think you just get the books and you read the books. And he was saying, don't read the book. He said, go through the book looking for questions. And he showed us what a question looked like. He goes, it's going to be an exact sentence. And he goes, you go paragraph by paragraph and pull the questions out. And so with those 10 books, I hand wrote over 6,000 flashcards and had them in the little black cases, little index cards. Guys can cheat now. They can build flashcards on their phone that do exactly the same thing. But that was my go-to. I went through all the KSAs and eliminated as much information as I could out of those, because 10 books is a lot for 100 question written test. And it worked out. It worked out good. Decision making. That's a big chapter. I've got a quote here. Which side are you on? What pitfalls do new officers commonly face, and how can they leverage what's in this book to help guide them?
Well, what's in the book is basically how I approach the situation from experience as a brand new lieutenant, as a brand new captain, as a brand new chief officer, and then seeing my peers around me, how they handle the same situation. And with the whole thing with that section of which side are you on, it gives contrasting positions as an officer. Are you there to train and to mentor and to work with the crews, or are you there for the perks and just to sit in your own private room and come out for meals and a toilet break? Which side are you on? Just because you attain rank, it doesn't mean you're not a firefighter anymore. And just because you have a different role as the other firefighters, it doesn't mean you're not part of the crew. Just because you have the authority and responsibility of the apparatus, the firehouse, the crew, talk on the radio, make some decisions here and there, that doesn't take you away from achieving the task that you've been ordered to do, or to maintain scene or situation safety. You still have all those other things to worry about. So a lot of guys, they get promoted, and this is just my opinion. A lot of guys, people get promoted, and because they have a broader authority and responsibility and some perks, they lose sight of the why they're there. Why are you there? If you're an officer and somebody comes to you late at night into your office and says, hey, I got a problem with my gear. I just noticed my paycheck something's wrong. I'm missing and you just dismiss that like, it's not my problem. Don't worry about it. Nah. You're going to build resentment, and guys, they're not going to work for you. They're going to work against you. So you have to handle these things with the same speed and diligence as you would handle your own problems, because you're the go-to guy now.
Yeah. Your list of, your skill set multiplies tremendously. You become bartender listener, not physically bartender at the station.
And another problem, guys,
but you become the listener.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
And a problem solver. And that was one thing that I didn't expect was, the guy comes to you and says, hey, can we talk for a minute? And you think it's going to be, so-and-so's not pulling his weight, blah, 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 blah.
It's a personal issue.
It's some personal issue with their kid or with their spouse or whatever. And we don't equip our people for that.
Hey, listen,
in training.
I got on the job when I was 21. I was married, had a baby. I didn't even have a checking account. One of the old timers pulled me aside and said, are you kidding? This is what you need to do. It's not just about learning the job. It's about learning how to be a man.
Yeah.
Or woman, I guess.
Yeah, it's learning how to function.
Another problem guys always find themselves backpedaling is they get a promotion and they have both feet on either side of the fence.
Yeah.
You're either part of the crew or you're kissing the administration's ass, and you can't have both. You can't. Right. It doesn't work that way. You have to You have to be part of your crew and be the officer of the crew, or go find an admin job, sit at a desk somewhere and work upstairs with the rest of the guys, because you can't do both. It doesn't work that way. You have to be all in on this side or the other side, because you're going to find out really quickly that things don't work out the way you expected.
Yep. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
People.
And another thing, with all due respect to fire chiefs, I did that job. Believe me, I know. He's not working for you. He's working for the mayor. He's got a department to run. He's not concerned about your boots and all that other stuff. He's got people for that. So when you start blaming the fire chief for this and that, he works for the mayor. That's the mayor's guy. So you need to find somebody else to work with and lower in the ranks to figure out what you need to get done.
And hopefully he puts somebody in place that is taking care of that. If the organization is big enough.
I could write another book about that.
Sometimes they're small. They are small, and they do have to do all of that stuff.
They do, but I mean, I'm speaking in generalities.
Yeah. You talk about the dance card.
Oh, the dance card.
And accountability. Explain that in the real world application.
So I kind of just watched old timers run their operations. A lot of it was done by memory. They'd stand in front of their building and they'd memorize stuff. I don't have a memory for that. I'm a visual guy. I'm a visual learner. I've been accused at times of being a simpleton, which is fine. I get it. But, we've had chiefs over the years who it started with the command board. They threw the command board at us, which is fine. It serves a purpose. It's a tool, the command board. And then one of the chiefs got an idea one day, we're going to do everything on the iPad. We're going to run the entire operation by an iPad. That way I can sit home in bed and watch what you're doing at your call. And basically the overwhelming response to that was, no, you're not. No, we're not. So they don't really teach you, at least where I come from, how to run the incident, how to run an incident. You learn from doing it, and you have certain resources, but it's on you. And for me, the most simple way to do it was the dance card. So in the book, I give examples of the dance card is just basically the rip and run sheet folded into quarters. And I'd write down in a column who's on a first alarm assignment by order, because how their dispatch is their response order: first due, second due, third due. And then I'd assign where they are or what they're doing on the dance card with usually a pen. Mm-hmm. And as I escalated the incident to more resources, I just add another column, or I'd add resources at the bottom. And I just quickly jot down, engine 1 is operating on floor number 2. Well, I mean, if you don't know what they're doing up there, the dance card is the least of your problems. They're operating. Right. What do you think an engine company is doing in a working fire? They're moving down a hallway. They're working in the,
If you got to get to that level, then there's a lot bigger problems in the organizations than your command.
Yeah, first due truck is popping the roof. Well, what does that mean? Popping the roof. The second due truck is, doing what they do.
Searching, whatever, yeah.
So I would just jot that down, and it just became easy to work with, easy to understand, and it allowed me to see and visualize the building in a more dynamic way, as opposed to being stuck at a command board in the street, maybe removed from the actual incident. I mean, there is a reason for that, and the command should be there. But if you're like the operations chief, or if you're running the fire, you got to be looking at the guys and the crews. You got to be looking at the building
and the situation,
because they're going to.
We were fortunate.
They're focused on their tasks. They're not focused on big picture stuff, and they can't necessarily see what's going on outside.
Yeah, if you want all that, if you want iPads and Tactrons and all that, you have to have that as a position. Like, I was fortunate to have a command. We called them command technicians. It was our battalion aide.
Yeah, we had these too.
And that was what they did. They operated the accountability boards and the tracking.
Exactly.
And they were monitoring the dispatch channel and the tactical channel and all that. You can't do it all. No. And if you get focused, it's just like an incident commander on a big incident. If you get so focused on developing the IEP and the IEP that you're not looking at what the situation is, then you're letting a system manage you instead of the incident. Yeah. And it's easy.
Yeah.
it's easy to get sucked into the paraphernalia, making sure you're running the board right or whatever, and you're not looking at the building.
Yeah, I used to tell the newly promoted chiefs and the newly promoted captains who were acting as chief officers at incidents. I used to tell them the command board is for everybody else, meaning the support services, the admin, to come in and look and say, "Oh, whoa, you go over there and watch what the crews are doing, because that's what you need to be. Watch the crews."
Or for you to ask back, like, where do we have engine 5?
Because maybe right here in the dance card.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I had a little cheat sheet, but every now and then, if you had a big incident, there'd be too many. I'd say I'd do 2 alarms with my little
like
sheet that
who's
I
in
had,
staging, that kind of stuff. That's all written down on the command board. I'd have to ask for that. I don't know, but what's in front of me and what's operating is all in my hand, and in my head, I'm managing it in front of me. And you know what? Like I said, I teach the thing with the fools, the first in boss for beginners, and they're freaking out when they first walk up to a building that's smoking. They're completely freaking out with size up, with a command board, a checklist. Where do I start? I'm overwhelmed. What do I? And we just kind of ease them into it in terms of, this is what's important and this is what's not important. Focus on this.
What happens when you get to a building that you can't do a 360 on, like downtown in an urban area?
There's a couple of simple tricks I show them. And once I show them the tricks, they're like, "Oh my God, that is so simple. It's so easy to understand." I feel more comfortable. And now we got them.
Tough subject. Chapter 8, you get into some line of duty death aftermath. Tell us about that chapter.
Well, I was a safety officer at that specific incident. I was the line of duty. And the reason why I included that is because if it's not talked about, then nothing can be learned from it. And even though it's a difficult subject, but it needs to be spoken about. It needs to be understood and learned from, because the majority of people who hear about a line of duty death only hear what they're told. They may see something on the news and may talk to a few people, or they may read something, but the minutia is what I wanted to get into, because I wanted the readers to understand how it feels to be in that situation, and how important it is to get it right the first time, so we don't have these situations. And there's things that you really don't understand or know about or hear about from these situations. I thought it was important to put that out there, so guys and girls get a real feel for what it's like to go through something like that, and how important it is to know your job and to do your job, and to understand the gravity of your rank, responsibility, and authority when you go out there and you start making decisions, as opposed to, "Oh, I was at that call. Yeah, no big deal." No, there's a huge impact to this stuff, this business we're in.
Yep. And then you've got, even though we have more resources now through the fire service with peer support and all that, but nothing is going to replace that relationship with the company officer when something like that happens, and the conversations and because you've sort of already should have that trust and that familiarity. And so sometimes the outside group coming in is not really the key.
No, they're
to processing.
A lot of, myself included, the intruders, basically tourists.
Yeah,
they don't understand what we do, and they don't understand what we're going through. I mean, you talk about the firefighter coming up to the officer and talking to the officer about something other than the fire service, something personal. That's basically the very next shift after that incident, I went right back to work, and that's exactly what I did. The entire shift was go from house to house to house, talking with the crews, because better to talk to me than from somebody that comes and says, "Oh, I'm a doctor from such and such. I've never been to a fire, but I can tell you all about how to handle grief." You're not listening.
Right. All right. You had a fire engineering article. It was called The Real Value of Fire Service Mentoring. And you talked about how you rose from near the top of the deputy chief's list to actually making it. How did those mentoring moments help shape your career?
Well, the first time I took the test, I came out number 12 out of 16, and they only promoted 8. So I was completely devastated, which is silly. But I used the next couple of years, 4 years or whatever, to understand where I went wrong and do better and study harder and learn the craft more than I did before. And I came out number one the second time. And that I had a lot of help. I had a lot of mentorship and a lot of direction and guidance. And I had basically a paradigm shift in my mindset when I realized I wasn't going to get promoted the first time. I had to understand that it was meant to be. That was for a reason. For whatever reason that was, it was meant to be. And I used that time up until the next exam to really not only get promoted, but to do that new job the right way. And that's the time I used to really learn that job as best I could. I got really comfortable doing, chief officer stuff.
So you didn't just reread the material and go in and answer the same way the second time and expect a different result?
Well, partly I did only because that was the process of getting promoted. But, I did really well. I got a 93 out of 100 on a written. So I was really, in tune with the material. Not that matters. That does not make a chief. No. It's just a task.
But it's the process. You got to beat the process sometimes to get the opportunity.
You got to get promoted first. But just going into the oral board and the scenarios that they threw at us, it's like, all right, well, this is how I would handle it. This, and this. And, it worked. I mean, I was more comfortable with the material. I was more comfortable under pressure making those decisions and thinking the process through. But that's just a slice of what I did. I had the luxury up until I got promoted to deputy chief. I had the luxury of having 10 years of experience acting deputy. So that's where I cut my teeth and made my bones and burned things down and made all kinds of mistakes being the acting deputy.
That was always one of my tricks on oral boards, is especially I never talked to the video camera. We always had a live panel. So they would ask you some, back in the days where every question was a career incident. You'd have 13 questions and the HR things where, somebody comes in drunk, sexually harassing, taking pills. And, it was like the doomsday of all things. And I would always pick a couple and I'd be like, well, I actually worked out a class in the lieutenant's position or the captain's position. And I actually had that happen. And here's the way I handled it. And I would answer it, but I kind of let the panel, I was telling them that I had experience handling those type of incidents. I actually would laugh sometimes. I'd be like, I actually had this happen. And you could see them reacting to it. I guarantee I got a higher score just by that psychology.
That's exactly what they're looking for: training, education, and experience. And if you start off your answers with that, that is the indication that, okay, let's listen to this.
Now, for those of you getting ready for a test, if you did that on every single question, they're going to figure you out. So don't overuse it. You talk about trust. That's a big one for me, is like, trust is everything. And without trust, you can't do anything. I always say trust, you got to have trust and competence. The quote, the incident commander's dilemma, and you write, trust is wholly based on consistency and dependability. Talk about that.
So, I would have certain guys on my shift as a chief. I would have certain officers on my shift who would consistently deliver the same result every time. And I used to actually go down to these guys at their firehouses and say, listen, with all due respect, every time you take a night off or a day off, I take that personally because I'm losing one of my key resources to get my job done. It's about relationships built on trust. If the officer or the person in charge or even the fire crew is consistent in their actions and can do the job consistently without excuses, without the same old, B team excuses, if they can get the job done, or if the officer can always deliver with valid radio reports, with valid initial actions, with other things that are off the grid that can't be broadcast but need to be taken care of, I can turn to this officer or that officer and say, hey, go handle that, please. that's where the trust comes in. And that's where the chief officer can use these key resources, these key personnel, to get his or her job done more efficiently and effectively. I don't have to spoon feed anything to these guys. I don't have to, retrain them on the fly in terms of what they need to do. It's trust. I can stand back and not even have to say a word because they know what to do. They know what they're doing, and they know what I need to hear or to see to get my job done. And it was based on trust. It's not even a personal relationship, because a lot of guys I just had work relationships with, not necessarily off the job, but it was that work relationship where I knew what I was getting. And if a guy gave me a report on the radio, I could trust it. If he says this, it's this. Where other people, I get a report on the radio and I'd have to go down here and visually verify it for myself to see if they're actually telling me, not necessarily lying to me, but if they're telling me the whole picture, or maybe it's their perception or their version. I have to go down.
It's their reality at the time, but maybe they don't have the depth or the experience.
I'd have to go down there, and then I'd have to work through the problem and school them a little bit. But it's just, this whole thing is based on personalities and relationships. For me, anyway. I mean, I could be all wet. Other guys would be telling me I'm crazy, but
I think it's huge. And what do you do
when you don't have those relationships? What do you do like you work a different shift and you just know the guys from maybe seeing them, or maybe you've never even seen these guys before? What do you use then? How do you build that trust factor then? You really have to, you got to figure out how to swim.
You got a very diverse background, from academic roles, teaching at the college, all your positions through the ranks at the fire department. You're on NFPA 1710. 2 years ago in my keynote, I challenged the whole young generation to get involved, and I strategically used the word infiltrate instead of just get involved. I said, you got to infiltrate the NFPA. You got to infiltrate the curriculum, the standards. And why is it important? A lot of guys have such a negative view of NFPA, and we all know there's things that don't make sense that keep us from doing it. But most of those folks don't know life prior to NFPA, and they don't know the standards and how they had effects. So why is it important for you to be involved outside of your job at the fire department, teaching, mentoring, working on NFPA committees? Why is that important for somebody in their growth as an officer?
Well, I've often said that, complaining is like comfort food. It's easy and it feels good.
It's delicious.
But the real problem is, what are you doing about it? We used to have officers who would call up the chief's officers, the shift commander, and say, well, this guy's doing this and this guy's doing that. And the first thing the chief officer would say is, well, what are you doing about it? Bam, hang up the phone. What the hell do you bother me with this for?
Why do I need you?
Yeah. So what are you doing about it? So I've often heard people close to me grumble about this and about that. And I don't like the way this is run, and I don't like the way this guy's doing this and that. I said, well, there is a solution. Take the test, get promoted, and now you have that authority and responsibility, so you can change it the way you feel best. But just to sit back and complain about it, you're not doing anything about it. So with me, with NFPA 1710, I thought it was a pretty cool idea, career deployment. Through the years in my department, every time they come up short with the budget, the first thing the chief and the mayor want to do is cut companies. Let's go right to the low-hanging fruit. Never mind all the stuff that we're wasting money on for any other crap. Let's go close firehouses and get rid of guys. And that used to grind my gears, because why are you going after us? We're the ones out here doing the job. Cut back on some of the other stuff, the feel-good projects and the initiatives and all the other stuff that you don't necessarily need. Get rid of that stuff. So one way for me was to get involved with NFPA 1710. Thank God they took me on. I've been with them a few years. And I felt it was important to have a career chief in the process when they write these standards of deployment and how many members should be on an apparatus, how many apparatus should be at a type of incident, those types of things. You know, it's not all bad. It's not all cut and chop and, you know, set up guardrails and restrictions. That's not what NFPA is all about. That's part of it. But the other part is making sure that when a chief or a mayor says, "Oh, we're gonna cut the budget," well, hold on a minute. You're going against the national standard. How do you explain that when it goes sideways? You go from 4 to 3, or when you go from, you know, sending 3 apparatus to 1 apparatus. How do you explain that? And here's why it's important to have those standards. And the other thing that I found is being on the committee, the last go around in the writing process, you know, I'm just a guy sitting in the back of the room. I really am nobody to speak of, but there were certain things that were being changed that I spoke up about. And now the things I spoke up about are actually in the standard. Mm-hmm. They were pounding they were coming up with problems about response times and why response times are so slow in certain places, in certain regions, at certain times of the year. Why does it take 12 minutes to get to a call that normally would take 3 minutes or whatever? And they were starting to look at certain things as to the why that took so long to get the apparatus there. And I said, wait a minute, hold on. It's been my experience that a lot, especially in the Northeast area, response times are delayed because the streets aren't plowed thoroughly. You got narrow roads where there should be wide roads, and you can't get an apparatus down there in the middle of a snowstorm or even a week or two after a snowstorm. The roads are narrow. And then throw in this new fad of outdoor dining where they bump out the curb so you can have your lunch and dinner out in the street instead of in the restaurant. That narrows the street down too. So now this
bike lane.
That's another problem that we have to deal with. So that's why the apparatus are slowing down at times in certain places in certain regions. It's not just guys are dragging their feet to get to the piece because it's another EMS call or it's a this or that. There's reasons behind it. And we found that out because we were going through an accreditation process and we couldn't figure out why the numbers were skewed. Response time numbers were skewed. And it was the process. It was the process coupled with the street problems and the street strictures. It was too long for the dispatcher to enter it into the computer, too long to push the button, too long for it to transmit it to the house.
Yeah, it's easy to blame the guys for all the problems. Yeah, I remember us doing the turnout time, and we were just like, where did this number come from? And we went back and we finally found out it's like the very first version. That number was just made up. It was a best guess. And so then we looked internally and we were like, all right, we kind of have 3 different station layouts. And like the new stations, you know, some of the bunk rooms were not close to the apparatus, you know, and so you had more travel time. You had all, you know, what if the guys are training, you know, when a call comes in and they got to pack up and secure stuff off of a side of a road. You can't just cut your stuff loose and just leave it there. It'll be gone when you get back. And so we ended up coming up with our own like turnout times and stuff, but that took years.
That's called reliability. That's the term they use. Not dependable, reliable. I was a little surprised by that, but that's the term that's used, reliability. What is your reliability?
And the other big buzzword was outliers. We're going to take the outliers out and come up with an average. So what would you say to a chief about adopting this book for a department mentoring program? What's the value add, and especially for the new officers? Like I know a lot of departments have started programs, and I wanted to ask you about that too. So some people have formal mentoring programs, and I got mixed emotions on them. I think they're all good, but I think there's a difference between getting assigned a mentor and then having kind of gravitating toward your mentors. Yeah. I think both are good, but what would you say to a chief about maybe adopt in this book, and what's your philosophy on that?
You got a better idea? Let's hear it. That's what I would say. You want to start a program? You want to make this formal? You want to, whatever you want to, let's hear it. You got a better idea? Let's hear it. This is for somebody who, who wants to be mentored, but can't necessarily be mentored, doesn't have somebody to mentor them, doesn't have a program, isn't getting what they want to hear in terms of being mentored. There might not be anybody with any real experience to go to. That mentor that you are gravitating towards might be from a different department. You might only be getting the good stuff as opposed to all the stuff, even the bad. So this is an opportunity for you to get some insight into how to go about your daily routine in terms of being an officer or aspire to be an officer. And this is just, I don't even know how I would describe it.
You become the proxy mentor in a way.
Yeah. It's meant to help the guys and gals who might not necessarily have anybody to go to, or might be going to the wrong person and not be getting what they really want to hear. Not everybody can go and talk about a line of duty death and the details and the minutia, because not everybody has experienced that.
Right.
Like I said, I was extremely fortunate to have 10 solid years of acting deputy chief experience, trigger time, not just my butt in the seat, trigger time to draw from. So when I actually got into the position with the promotion, it was just, learning the ins and outs of that new job as opposed to standing in front of a building or a car accident or a hazmat call or something else. That was covered already. I had the experience. So not everybody is that fortunate to have those people around. So this is why I put the book together. First it was the class, and now it's the book. It's to give somebody an opportunity to learn something that might not be found in other books or from other people.
Yep. And if they do have a mentor, it's a good driver of the conversation.
Yeah, and you know what?
They could from both sides. Maybe you're mentoring somebody and you can get some tips.
Yeah, well, mentoring goes both ways too. The mentor might need a mentor, and you could school somebody under you, but who's schooling you? And you might need to go out and find somebody else to talk to help yourself out as well. So mentoring is a two-way street.
What kind of feedback and reaction have you gotten from folks who've read the book?
Well,
it's been out for about 6 or 7 months now.
Yeah, the consistent feedback that I've heard is that it's like having a conversation. And that's exactly what they were looking for, as opposed to being fed information, being fed textbook or training manual or process or algorithm. It's not that. It's a conversation. And that's the draw that I've heard a lot of people say. It's like talking to you. I hear your voice when I'm reading the material. And one of my mentors, peers, called me up and he says, "You know something? I just read your book." He says, "I laughed, I cried, I got mad, and I learned something." Now, to me,
perfect day.
Perfect. Yeah, I won.
Yeah.
When he told me that, I'm like, I guess I did. I guess it came out all right. But
writing a book is certainly a labor of love. There's not a ton of money in it unless you're a Stephen King or get a movie deal or something like that. But it's, it really is a form of mentoring itself, because you're passing along knowledge to people that you may never even meet or reach, but they have the ability to see and gain from your insights. So, how long did it take you to put the thing together?
The funny thing is, I have been teaching at FDIC this class, critical thinking, for a couple of years. And when Nick Papa's book came out, coordinating ventilation, his book was on the shelf, just came out. He was doing a book signing and he had taken a break. And I'm standing in the hallway across from the bookstore at FDIC. And I just said to him, just casually, I said, and I pointed to the bookshelf and I said, maybe someday my shit will be up there. Mm-hmm. And he says, "Well, You need to talk to this guy and make it happen. And here we are.
It's awesome. Feeling the pride to see it up there on the shelf, I bet.
Yeah, it's I never expected in a million years to be in this position. Never. I was just one of those
We're glad you
work and kept my head down and mind my own business and did my job. And now,
now you're gracing the cover.
Yeah.
Gracing the cover.
Well, yeah, when you turn the page in the magazine and you see this, it's incredible. It's for me, it's incredible.
Yeah. And that's this month, right? Don't you have an article this month?
This was last month. Yeah, this month I have an article. It's the safety officer more than just a checkbox. And awesome. And that talks about, again, the hard part. The safety officer isn't just watching tasks and watching crews and watching this, that, and the other thing and making sure all the checkboxes are marked and everything is. What if your incident commander is going off the rails? You still have a responsibility. And it happens. Things happen. So you really got to step in and make an unpopular decision and do the right thing. And, a lot of guys are like, wait a minute, didn't think of that. Well, I did because it happened. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I don't mind being the bad guy as long as nobody gets hurt.
I hear you. All right. It's an insider's guide to mentoring the fire officer by Lee Shapiro. He's been our guest today. It's been fun getting the insights and catching up. If you want to get a copy, you can get your copy at fireengineeringbooks.com. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Lee, enjoyed spending an hour with you, and
thank you for this opportunity.
Good luck. And before we know it, we'll be back at FDIC.
Thank you for this opportunity.
All right, everybody, it's David Rhodes, and this one is In the Books.